guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I don't talk about enough. These are books that I've probably mentioned before, or ones that I really loved, and I just haven't spoken about them as much as I probably should. I have 5 books to share with you today. 5 books that definitely should get more recognition than they do, and books that I feel like I really need to talk more about. So let's just get into it. The first one I have is Grace and Fury by Tracy Banghart. I read this last year and absolutely loved it. This is actually the first book in a duology. The second book is Queen of Ruin, which I have not read yet. So this story follows 2 sisters, Serena and Nomi, in a world where women basically do not have any rights at all. Serena has been training to be a Grace, which is kind of like a mistress to the heir to the throne. This status would mean living the high life, wearing fancy dresses, eating fancy food, and fawning over the heir. For the world that they're in, this is the ideal example of a perfect woman. Nomi, on the other hand, is Serena's younger sister. She is very rebellious and strong-willed, and definitely completely disagrees with the fact that women have no rights and no say in anything. Plus, she's also harboring a very dangerous secret. It ends up being that even though Serena is training to be a Grace, she has Nomi by her side there for the beginning of it, but Nomi catches the eye of the heir, and it ends up being that they switch places, and Nomi is the one that's put in the position to possibly become a Grace, and then Serena ends up being sent off to an island where everybody has to fight to survive. So they're both in 2 completely different places. Nomi's in a place that she never would have dreamt of becoming a part of because she hates everything about it, and Serena, wanting to be a Grace, wanting to be this person that everybody looks up to, is now fighting for her life. Like, I love that there's that switch, and I love that they're opposites. I just love that the fact that there's this world where women have no rights and they can't say how they feel, they can't speak their minds, they can't do what they want, and then you have people who want to stand up to that and who believe that everyone should be equal. It's definitely a book that I highly recommend for people who love reading kind of like a feminist fantasy. It definitely comes off as quite feminist, and I really love it. I really love that the women sort of take over in this, and they sort of shut down anyone who tells them that they don't have any rights, that they can't do the things that they want to do. I just really loved this story. It was just perfect, and I really need to read the second book. The next one that I have is Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. You've probably heard about Libba Bray. She's written quite a lot of YA books. This is the only one of hers that I've actually read. I feel like I should have read more, but I haven't. So this follows a bunch of teenage girls who are entering in a beauty pageant, and they get flown over for the competition when the plane actually crashes and lands on a deserted island. There's a whole bunch of mystery and satire and kind of gore, but all in all, it's actually hilarious, and it's not just told in the normal way of telling a story. Like, it's similar to Illuminae Files, how nothing's told like a normal story that's told in like files and descriptions and pictures and things like that. This is told in sort of like a TV show format. There'll be bits that will be describing the contestants as though you would on like a show where there is a beauty pageant, or like The Bachelor, or one of the any reality TV show where they're introducing contestants. There's also bits and pieces of ads on the TV, which are honestly the best. They're just making fun of reality TV essentially, and it's honestly a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this, and I feel like I'm due for a reread for this because it's so quick to get through and it's just funny. I mean, there are some serious moments, but it's just making fun of everything that is reality TV. But I highly recommend this if you have read The Selection and you really enjoyed that series, or if you want to read something that is satirical and is making fun of reality TV and beauty pageants and all that sort of thing, and for a book that's told just a little bit differently. Plus a book that also has a little bit of thriller to it as well. The next one I have is one I actually got in a book box, and I hadn't heard of it before until I got it in the box, and that is The Art of Taxidermy by Sharon Kernot. I absolutely loved this book when I first read it. I am a poet myself, and I love reading anything that is poetry or novel in verse, it just speaks to me in a different way than a normal novel does. This one is a novel in verse, and it actually inspired me to write the book that I'm currently writing, which is also a novel in verse. It's essentially a novel in verse dealing with the topic of loss and grief. We follow a young girl who's dealing with the loss of a loved one, and she has in a way become obsessed with death. But it is told so beautifully that, you know, I feel like if reading poetry or verse is your kind of thing, you definitely need to read this. I recommend it. Later, I found a crow, its feathers so black they shone with a blue tinge in the bright sunshine. It lay on its side at the base of a jacaranda. Purple flowers scattered beneath, as if it had fallen asleep, floated down serenely from a branch above. I stroked its sleek feathers, expecting it to wake, flap strong wings and fly off, but it slept on. I really loved this, and there's no other way I can describe it except that it is beautifully told. It's a beautiful exploration of loss and love and grief. And like I said, I highly recommend it if poetry or verse is your kind of thing. Even if it's not and you sort of want to get into it, this is one that I would recommend because it's easy to get through, and poetry in itself a lot of the time is easier to get through because it is quick. But this one is definitely easy to get through, and it's relatable, and it touches on subjects that are quite emotional. The next one that I have is another one that touches on some heavy subjects, and that is Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. This was the first and only book I've read of Sophie Kinsella, but I've heard she's a really good author, and I really did like this, and I would like to read more of hers. But this one follows a young girl, Audrey, who has social anxiety, severe social anxiety, to the point that she won't speak to anybody, she won't leave the house, she won't go anywhere unless she has her sunglasses. That's sort of her like security blanket. She ends up meeting her brother's friend, whose name is Linus, and they instantly start getting along, sending notes to one another and developing a friendship that could potentially be more. And he slowly helps her get back into the real world and experience things, and he helps her realize that her anxiety shouldn't stop her from doing things that she wants to give a try, that things that she wants to try and do. And he sort of helps her work through this mental illness. I loved this because I could relate to this, because even especially at the time I was reading this, my social anxiety was quite bad. It's getting better, but it definitely was quite bad as I was reading this, and I could understand where she was coming from. And I also relate to it because with her friend Linus, I kind of see that as the same sort of thing with me and my husband Brad. He always tries to push me to do things, but he knows my limits. He knows that if I really refuse to do something, I won't do it. But he does push me to try things, and since we got together, I have tried so many different things with him because he has helped me realize that we should take these experiences and enjoy our lives as best we possibly can, and not let our mental health bring us down. Because granted, it can be so bad some days with your mental health, and I know that so many people suffer from various different illnesses, and it can't just be like, it can't just go away, and it can't just go away just like the flick of a switch. But it definitely helps to have someone there to push you and get you to do these things that you wouldn't normally do. He sort of lifts that blockage for her, and I really liked that. I really liked that she could have this relationship that helped her work through her issues and work through what it was that started it in the first place. But I really loved this, and not just because her name is Audrey and she wears Audrey Hepburn sunglasses, but because it does have some comedy in it, and it is relatable, and it deals with mental health. And the last one that I have for you today is Paper Daisies by Kim Kelly. I probably mentioned Kim Kelly on my channel once or twice before because I do love her books. She is a local author near me, and she writes some amazing stories that are set in Australia, in historical Australia, and I really love the ones that I've read because she's just so good at weaving a story. And this one is one of my favorites because the main character is just so strong. She reminds me of Nomi from Grace and Fury. Actually, she won't let anybody stop her from doing what she wants to do. It's December 1900 and Barilda Jones is heading home to Bathurst for Christmas. Tragically, home is where she and her beloved sister Greta live under the control of their sadistic uncle Alec. But Barilda has a plan, born out of desperation to free herself and Greta from Alec for good, if she can only find the courage to execute it. Then, on New Year's Eve, just as Alec tightens his grip on the sisters, a stranger arrives at their gate, Ben Wilbury, a botanist in search of a particular native wildflower, with his friend, the artist Cosmo Thompson. Ben is oblivious to what depravity lies beyond this threshold, and what follows is a journey that will take him and Barilda and Greta and Cosmo out to the gold rush town of Hill End in search of a solution to what seems an impossible situation. Paper Daisies is a story of what it means to find moral courage, of a crime that must be committed to see justice done, and of a sweet love that flourishes against the odds. So this is a technically historical fiction romance, and it definitely deals with abuse, and not just emotional abuse, but sort of physical, sexual abuse as well, which is a trigger warning as well. I'll give you that now. All of Kim Kelly's books deal with very strong women, and they don't let people knock them down. They don't let people take charge of them. They take charge of themselves. And our main character, Barilda, is just so confident with herself, and she knows what she wants and she knows how to get it, and she's not going to let any man tell her otherwise. But I definitely love the romance in this as well. I think it's just so sweet, and it's a slow burn romance. There's not a great deal of like fluff in this, but it's just like the perfect amount of romance and history. And I just love the backdrop of Australia in the early 1900s. I will read anything set in Australian history because I just love reading about it. But this is definitely one I recommend for my historical fiction fans as well. There we go, guys. There are the 5 books that I don't talk about enough, but I should probably do more in the future. Definitely high on the recommendations list. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!